Okay, thank you, Nikhil. How about the folks who have connected through our social media platform? Are you guys able to hear me? Okay, thank you, Rakshit. Thank you, Dheeraj. I'm just doing a quick check. I'm just doing a quick check. Okay, it seems like even the social media platforms where we are live, so even yeah, even we are good from there as well. Okay, I can see few learners are still joining in. Okay, so let's get started, guys. We'll start with today's agenda, and by the time folks join, yeah, we'll continue forward in our discussion. Okay, so team, so let me just share you as how you can get the most of the webinar session that are being conducted. So all the webinars that are being conducted from Manifold AI Learning, you can access it in a single place by visiting the manifoldailearning.in. Now, by visiting this site, click on courses, and under the courses, search for the course which is Manifold AI Learning Workshop. So once you click on this workshop, you can just join for free by clicking on access the workshops now. And once you are logged in, so as a learner, you'll be getting an interface that would look like this. So by the time the session starts, you can just go ahead and select the session and click on join class. So this will help you to automatically join the webinar using the Zoom link. So that's how you can join the webinar session. And the best part is in the same interface, you can get the sessions recording as well. If you check, all the previous sessions recording are made available in the same portal. And not only that, whatever the code that we will be using as part of our live discussion, so everything will be posted here. And you will have the lifetime access for these sessions recording so that you can refer back to this same recording at a later point as well for your future reference purpose. So that's how you can get the most of the webinar sessions that are being conducted by Manifold AI Learning. So this session is made possible by the team of Manifold AI Learning. So folks, as we proceed along in the learning journey, so ensure that you ask question because I want to make this session as interactive as possible to answer the queries that you might have. Now, let me tell you the reason that we started conducting this webinar. So, the reason that we started conducting this webinar because so one thing that we found, at least in the domain of MLOps space, is we see limited set of resources that are available in this MLOps space, and we know that, like even as I've worked in various companies for various clients, so we have understood one common thing. One challenge that we have got is 90% of the machine learning models that we train will not make it to the production. And this would happen for variety of reason. It could be because of the data itself was not available, or the amount that is spent to bring the model and finally to integrate it to the production environment. There was no clear path at that time. And another reason that we started facing this issue because like no one knew in the project as how actually the deployment would work. So these were some of the common challenges that we had in the machine learning projects. And that's when we, like in the organization where I worked, so we came up with various strategies and the best practices. So one of the best practices that was well-known practice was DevOps. So we started using DevOps, and then we started implementing the DevOps principles, and we started hitting the roadblocks or the challenges over there. And then after a while, we found that we were not the only ones who were facing the challenges. We started seeing a lot of tools that started coming up, the AWS and Azure. So many other cloud platforms, they came up the solution for these. But even with all the resources, so no one seems to be aware as how we can actually get started with any MLOps journey. So the goal of these webinar sessions that are being conducted by Manifold AI Learning is to make you understand about MLOps and the importance of it, and how you can use these practices of MLOps in your machine learning projects so that you can increase the chances of bringing such models to the production environment. Okay, now the agenda of today's discussion is Python for MLOps. Now, the reason that we have chosen this topic because, as you know, Python is the most widely used programming language, especially from from the perspective of data science and machine learning. So one good reason is like it has got rich set of libraries. We have a lot of advantages of using this Python. Like it is easy to get started. Anyone can actually get started and start focusing on the solution instead on the syntax. So that's the reason that Python is a most widely used programming language. And when you're working from in a data science project, so obviously when you are given with the data set, you will be in a perspective as, okay, I have got a data, I want to perform the analysis on this data set, and you will be focused on bringing the best model possible. By bringing the best model possible, you want to increase the accuracy of the model and you want to ensure that the business will get the most once you have built the model. So overall, as a data scientist or a machine learning engineer, you will be focused on the like one of the key area that is building the model. But when we talk about the productionalizing such model, that's a whole different game. So in this session, we'll talk about what are the key things that you need to focus on from the software engineering standpoint so that you can actually follow the best practices in your machine learning projects as well. So that's the main goal of this session team, to make you aware about the common best practices that you need to follow when you're writing the code for your production environment. Now, before we get started with today's agenda, guys, so can you please introduce yourself? So please let me know your name and like your experience in productionalizing the machine learning model. So if you have not done any productionalization, that's still fine. So I just want to know from you as what is your experience level when it comes to productionalization and and the overall aspects that you have considered over there. So please let me know. Please type in through the questions tab or the chat window to share more about the same. Okay, I see Rakshit has responded. Rakshit says, I have not been part of any productionalization, but yeah, I'm working on POC. Okay, that's great, Rakshit. Okay, what about others team? Have you worked on any productionalization or have you deployed your model to the production environment? Okay, Sandeep says, yeah, we are currently working as of now and we are planning to use the GCP. Okay, that's great. Okay, I see Lakshmi has responded. Lakshmi says that, sir, we are planning for AWS. Okay, that's great, Lakshmi. How about others team? So do you have any experience in productionalizing the machine learning model? Deepti, okay, Deepti says that, sir, I'm very new. Okay, haven't got. Okay, that's fine, Deepti. And Srihari says currently studying engineering third year, currently no experience with production. Okay, that's fine, Srihari. Okay, awesome, guys, and thank you so much for your responses. Okay, I see one more response here. That is Samyukta. Samyukta says, I do not have an experience. Okay, that's completely fine, guys. Okay, so don't worry. We'll talk about those things as we progress in the learning journey. So I can see we've got the mixed set of learners. We've got people who are in the advanced stages of machine learning deployment where they have created a project and then they are planning for productionalizing. And we also have few learners today so who are very new to this MLOps and the overall the productionalizing of the machine learning model. All right. So what we'll be having as part of today's agenda is, so we will be looking at some of the best practices that you need to follow whenever you're writing the code for production environment. And then we'll also talk about the use case on the usage of data structures for effective code writing. Okay, we'll talk about the data structures as well, which are nothing but the Python data structures and the best practices around it. And we'll also talk about the errors and the logging. So how to catch the error and how to perform the logging using the Python programming language. And we'll also talk about the strategies for testing and the high level details about version control, dependencies, and packaging. So that would be the agenda of today's session, guys. Now, going further, like as we proceed in today's session, so feel free to ask any questions, team, so that you get the most of this today's session. So I hope we are good to start. So if yes, so please confirm by typing as all good in the chat window or in the Q&A window to confirm so that we can get started with today's agenda. Okay, thank you, Rakshit. Thank you, Diksha. Thank you, Sampriti. Thank you, Damayanti. Okay, thank you, Dheeraj. Okay, I see other confirmations on our social media channels as well. Okay, thank you, Lakshmikant. Okay, thanks a lot, guys, for confirming. So let's get started, guys. So let's start with looking at the best practices that we need to follow whenever we are writing the code for production environment. See, one of the like as we progress, so as I mentioned, so it's very important that we follow the best practices. So now the question that comes to your mind is, why should I write? A, why should I follow the best practices of like why should I follow the best practices whenever I'm writing the code? Because I am the only person in my team. Now, why should it matter for me? Well, imagine this. Let's say you are asked to integrate a machine learning model with a larger system. So let's assume that you've got a very large system which has got multiple servers, multiple systems which are working together, and it's a large system. Okay, and you are asked to now integrate your machine learning model to make it part of this large system. Or perhaps you're preparing a package for distribution to a wider audience. Now, in such scenarios, the quality of the code will becomes a very important one. Well, the reason it's because it ensures there will be a smooth execution, scalability, as well as longevity of your code. So think of the type of code, the quality of code as the foundation, as a sturdy foundation for a skyscraper that you're going to build. So what happens if the foundation is not right? No matter how tall the building is, if the foundation is not right, it might crumble under the pressure. So as and when your project grows in your organization, even the complexity of the implementation will also go. Now, in such scenarios, a good code is the one that will be highly valuable for any organization. So let's dive deep and understand why exactly this having a good code is essential when it comes to creating the code for production environment. So let's start with why good code matters. Well, the reason having a good code matters because it's crucial when you're integrating to the when you're integrating the data science into larger system. And this is especially useful whenever you are working in the project which involves the machine learning deployment, package distribution, or even when you are working in a collaborative environment where you are having a people working from different teams are working along with you. In such scenarios, the having a good code practices will definitely come in handy, and it is valuable for code bases which requires repetitive execution and scalability. That means scalability is nothing but writing the code once and maybe using it multiple times. So like where there are repetitive execution that are happening with the code that you have got. So which means the repetitive execution is dependent on the single code that you have written. So in such scenarios, a good quality of the code is the one that decides whether it will make the system or it will break the system itself. And as and when the project grows in size and the complexity, the good code becomes a paramount one. So think of this having a good code as, as like a craftsmanship. So imagine you are someone who is a skilled artist, and you are someone like you are crafting a piece of fine furniture. Now, when you're crafting a piece of fine furniture, each cut that you would do, each joint that you will do, you will execute it in a meticulous manner with precision and even with care as well. So this analogy is the one that will perfectly encapsulate how software engineers perceive the coding as a form of a craftsmanship. Now, as a software engineer, because obviously when you have reached the point of the deployment, you will right now take the hat of software development or the software engineer and then create a code in that way. Because for a software engineer, okay, writing the code is not just merely a task, it's basically an art. Because as a software engineer, you will be crafting the solution which are not only an efficient one but also an elegant as well. So just like a carpenter who cherishes the beautifully crafted cabinet, the engineers derive the satisfaction from writing the code that is well structured and a durable one. And this mindset is the one that will transform the coding from a mundane like a day-to-day activity, like a mundane chore, like instead of just becoming a like as a part of just day-to-day activity, but instead it will make you in a fulfilling pursuit, because every line of code that you would write is like a stroke of creativity. Every function is a masterpiece in its own right. So it's important that you focus on the quality of code. And another key thing that you need to remember when you are building the code for the production environment is the understanding of the technical depth. So let's confront the reality, guys. So when you are working in a software development environment, obviously there will be a technical depth. Imagine that you are under immense pressure and you want to deliver a project on a tight deadline. Now, in that scenario, you hastily cut the corner and you will, some cases, you will sacrifice the code quality for the making the code as fast as possible. Now, that is where the technical debt rears its ugly head. The technical debt refers to the cumulative cost of the suboptimal coding practices, which could be missing documentation, poorly structured code, and even the inefficient algorithms. Just like a real debt that accrues the interest over the period of time, the technical debt incurs a hefty price tag in the format of the increased maintenance effort for bug fixing, and it's a necessary evil in a fast-paced world of software development. But one must be managed diligently so that you can prevent it from spiraling out of control. So, which means having the good created code is not just a kind of a luxury, but it is an essential thing. And another key aspect that you need to remember when you are working in any software development or even the deployment of the machine learning models is the evolving requirement. So if you have worked in any machine learning projects, you know that requirements keep on changing. The business comes back to you and says that I don't want to focus on this metric. Now this is the metric that is important for me. And they'll straight away say that, okay, whatever the metric that you're showing, it's not useful for me and I want you to rework on something new. Or maybe I want to add 5 new columns in the overall schema. Now, in such scenarios, in the ever changing landscape of this machine learning development as well as the software development, the key thing is the adaptability. So, here, when you are working in such dynamic environment, so having a good code will serve as your compass. It will guide you through the various seas of change. It will be like a flexible roadmap that will allow you for seamless modification as well as the integration of the new features. Okay, so that's the importance for having a good code, guys. That is adaptability to the evolving requirement. And some of the key principles or the guiding principles that you need to follow whenever you're writing any code is simplicity. So simplicity, modularity, readability, performance, and robustness. So these are the guiding principles of creating an effective code. So think of these principles as the pillars which are supporting the quality code. So simplicity means it encourages us to eliminate the unnecessary complexity and the repetition. Whenever you are creating the code, make your code more elegant and maintainable. And when you say modularity, so modularity advocates breaking down the code into logical and reusable components that would foster scalability and that will also foster reusability. And when we say readability, so readability emphasizes the importance of adhering to the coding standard. This could be using descriptive names, and this is also done through the thorough documentation. This will ensure that our code remains comprehensible and accessible by the others who are part of our team. And performance, performance urges us to optimize the code for efficiency and the resource utilization. By maximizing its speed and the responsiveness, finally, this robustness demands that our code should be reproducible and it is resilient to errors and it is thoroughly tested. This will guarantee the reliability and the stability. So, these are the key principles of writing an effective code. So, what we have looked at is we have looked into the importance of the quality code. So the quality code is not just a nicest thing, but it's a necessary in the world of software development, and even it is completely true when we think about deploying the machine learning models to the production environment. By having a quali quality written code, this will enhance the usability, maintainability, and the scalability, which will lay the foundation for the successful project. So, by embracing these principles like simplicity, modularity, readability, performance, and robustness, we can elevate our coding craftsmanship to the new height. Okay, so that's the importance of creating a quality code. Now, when we talk about the machine learning project, so the question is, how does the code should look like? So to demonstrate the importance of each of these principles that I've talked about, let me show you the code demonstration of the same. So as I mentioned, we'll be using the Python programming language. That's the topic of today's session. Now we'll go ahead and create the code in the same way. So I'll launch my Jupyter Notebook team in order to show you the code demonstration. Okay, I've launched the Jupyter Lab. So let's have a quick demonstration of some of the practices, best practices that we need to follow. See, one of the best practice that we need to follow whenever we are writing the code is the simplicity. To give you an example, so one of the common thing that we would do is, so we will generally perform the pre-processing. So in order to perform the pre-processing, one of the common pre-processing activity that we will do is the application of the standard scaler. So if I want to give a demonstration of how does a simplicity would look like, okay. So assume that you've got something called as xtrain. Then the example for the simplicity would look something like this. Here, I'm importing the standard scaler. Then, once I import this standard scaler, I'll instantiate the object and will perform fit and transform on the given data set. This is a very simple illustration as how you can uh, like avoid the repetition and how you can actually remove the unnecessary complexity. Instead of you coming up with your own transformation logic, especially for performing the standard scaler, it is recommended that you make use of the tried and tested libraries and its respective functions and classes so that you can implement it on your project. So that's one key suggestion that we would say whenever you are working. So obviously when the standard is not applicable, then you can definitely go back and implement it using your own custom solution. But if the standard is available, if the tested model is available, it is recommended that you make use of the same to avoid the unnecessary challenges over there, guys. Okay, then the another principle that is always suggested is modularity. So modularity is nothing but breaking down your project, okay, into multiple components. Now, when we talk about the machine learning, so one common thing that we will do is in our machine learning project, even when we want to implement it on a given data set, we'll generally perform the pre-processing. And after we perform the pre-processing, we will go ahead and apply the model. So this is the general activity that we generally perform whenever we are working. So when we are having such scenarios, okay, it is important and the commonly suggested method is when you are suggested to break down your machine learning pipeline into its various components, and it is recommended that you simplify it as much as possible. And one of the common suggestion that is provided is making use of a pipeline. So from the sklearn library, we've got something called as the pipeline. Now by creating a pipeline, you can actually mention how does the overall steps should be performed when you are applying a data set. Now in this example, I've created a pipeline, and this pipeline has got two components. One is data pre-processing, and the other one that we have got is the model application. Okay, so these are the two things that we have got, and this will be applied in a sequential manner in the scenario. Okay, so that's another best practice that is recommended when you are implementing it, and this is an example of modularity. And the another recommendation that I would say whenever you are creating the code is increase the readability. Okay, increase the readability of the code. So as and when possible, ensure you mention the names of the variable. Okay, ensure you specify the names of the variable as much descriptive as possible. Like an example, instead of simply calling it as RF, okay, maybe you can just mention it as RF regressor, which will give the person an idea as what exactly is that particular variable is referring to. Because at the end of the day, if you leave that project and join the other project, so you should be having a reference or like the person who is reading your code, he or she should be able to read the code and understand what is happening. And by following such best practices, by ensuring you make use of the descriptive names and you adhere to the coding standard, that will help the teams in a long way. Okay, so this is an example of the readability. And the another key aspect when it comes to uh, creation of the best code for the machine learning project is considering the performance criteria. Okay, so here when it comes to considering the performance criteria, there are two things, guys. Okay, so when we say performance, one, it could be the code execution, and the another one, obviously, the model performance. So when we talk about the code execution, obviously, the if you follow the above mentioned approach, that is simplicity, modularity, and readability, you would be uh, you would be covered from the code execution standpoint. From the model performance standpoint, obviously, so one of the common thing that you would do is maybe you'll perform the hyperparameter tuning, so you can go ahead and optimize your machine learning model for the efficiency. Okay, so that's the overall way that you can think about when we say that, okay, performance, code execution, and model performance. So these are the best practices and the strategies that we use that is recommended whenever you are working in the machine learning projects, guys. All right, team. So what we have seen is some of the common practices that you need to follow whenever you are writing the code for your productionalization aspect, that is productionalizing your machine learning model. So I'll take a pause here, guys. So I want to do a quick check-in. So are you able to follow along with me, team? So if yes, please confirm me in the Q&A tab. If you are unable to follow along, or if something is not understood, please feel free to let me know. Or if you want me to adjust the pace, please do let me know as well. So are you able to follow along with me, team? Please confirm. Okay, thank you, Rakshit. Thank you, Diksha. Okay, thank you, Sridhar. Thank you, Deepthi. How about others? Are you able to follow along with me? Okay, thank you, Darshan. Okay, sure, Shrihari says you can you go a bit faster? Definitely, Shrihari. Okay, how about others? Okay, Lakshmikant says all good, sir. Okay. Dheeraj says you can. Okay, I'm new, but I'm able to follow. Okay, thank you so much, guys, for confirmation. So let's proceed along in our learning journey. Okay, now the next component that we have got is it's more from the coding standpoint. That is how you can go ahead and like how to make use of the data structures. Okay, we'll talk about the data structures. Going further, team. All right. So, as I mentioned, this session is made possible with the help of MLOps. Now, team, if you're someone who wants to go further and dive deep into the MLOps, I would highly recommend a course from Manifold AI Learning team, that is MLOps Bootcamp, where you will be mastering the AI operation for success. And this is a course which is there more than 37 plus hours of learning content, guys. And some of the key reason that I would recommend you to check out their course, because so here they will be covering the various topics like Python, data science fundamentals to advanced machine learning workflows, Git essentials, Docker, CI/CD pipelines, and beyond. And you'll also learn about the post-productionalization and even monitoring of the machine learning models as well. So if you look at their curriculum is crazy in depth. So the curriculum of this machine learning course, like MLOps courses, you'll be learning about the basics of Python, Python for data science, Git and GitHub essentials, packaging the machine learning models, understanding and working with ML flow for managing your experiment, crash course on YAML, Docker for machine learning, how to build the machine learning application using fast API, Streamlit, Flask. Not only that, you'll also learn about how you can implement the CI/CD, mastering the Linux operating system, working with Jenkins, monitoring and debugging of the machine learning system, monitoring with Prometheus, deploying the multiple applications, multiple container images with Docker Compose, continuous monitoring of machine learning application, monitoring the ML system with logs, as well as the strategies that you need to follow after the productionalization of the machine learning models. So guys, as I've mentioned, this covers in depth, and the best part is for the learners who have joined with us. So like you can make use of the coupon code webinar25. By using this coupon code, you can avail 25% off on the prices that you see on their website. Okay, so let me just take you through as how you can access this course. So the way that you can access this courses, go to the site manifoldailearning.in, click on courses, and the course that I'm referring to is this MLOps Bootcamp. So you'll be able to see the price, whatever the price that you see on top of that. If you use webinar 25, so by default it's 20%, but for the learners who have joined with the session today, you would be getting the 25% off on the prices that you see on the site. So you can use the code and get the 25% off, guys. Okay, so as and when we progress in the session, in case if you have got any questions, feel free to let me know. I'll be happy to answer any of the queries you might have, guys. All right, so let's proceed with our today's agenda. In the meantime, let me just share the link to the others as well. All right, guys. So let us proceed ahead. So yeah, you can also check out some other courses which I've got an opportunity to create with them. If you check out their site, you'll be able to use the same coupon code and avail 25% off, guys. Okay, there are some statistics, practical MLOps with AWS, linear algebra, AWS machine learning certification, and your NLP. All right, now moving on. So let's look into the usage of these data structures for effective coding. So let's look into some key strategies around it. Now, before I dive deep into this concept of usage of these data structures, so I want to take a pause here and I want to understand, okay? So, like what are the data structures that we have when we are working with this Python programming language? And what do you mean usage of data structures for effective coding? So, I want to know from you guys. Okay, that's correct. That's exactly right, Pranav. Pranav says data structures are the built-in data types. Okay, that is there for me to, okay, hold the multiple values. That's exactly right. That's exactly right, Pranav. Okay, now how does it matter, team? So how does the data structures is going to matter to us as and when we are working in the machine learning project? So Dheeraj says because I'll be storing the values in a variable. Exactly, guys. So as most of you have mentioned, so data structures are basically the elements, okay, which has got the ability to store the multiple values. Now, when we talk about the native Python data structures, we basically have tuples, dictionaries, and the set. So those are the common data structures that we have whenever we are working. So the common data structures that we have got is list, tuples, and dictionaries. So let's have a look into the same. So when we talk about the list, so list is basically the collection of values. Okay, it's a collection of values where the values are enclosed within the square brackets and you can actually work with the same. Now the question is, which one should we use whenever we are working? Now for the demonstration of this, okay, so what I'll be doing is I'll create some list that will give you some background as, okay, uh, like which one should we use? Okay, so let's consider a common use case when you're working in a production environment. So when you're working in a production environment or when you're writing any code for the machine learning, so one thing that you will do is you'll create a list and you want to fetch an element from that particular list by mentioning its index position. So let's see what happens, how much time it will take if the list size grows, because as and when the list size grows, the size of size of the list is also going to grow, right, from the memory standpoint. Now in such scenarios, let us check as how much time does it take. Okay, how much time does it take and what is the impact that it has got if I'm using the Python list. So let me just create the small list. I'll just create a very small list and I'll say list, and maybe this contains some, let's say 10 elements. Now if I create a small list, okay, I'll make use of the time it, which is the special function that is available, which will help me to understand as, okay, how much time it has taken for execution. Let's assume that I want to get the last element from this list. So I'll say -1. Now let me just execute it. So if I try to get the last element from this list that I've got, let's see how much time it will take. Okay, so it is giving me the output as 14.3 ns, and this is the time it says. Okay, now let me do one thing. Let me just create a very large list. I'll say LR, and maybe I'll create a Python list which has got 10,000 entries, and then I'll try to get the last element from this large list. So when I'm getting the large element from this large list, okay, let's see as how much time it takes up to get the last element. So you can see that the time it takes, okay, the time taken is approximately the same for both the list. Even though the second list that I have got is 1000 times the size of the first, okay, if you're performing the lookup operation, okay, it takes up a single time, okay, it takes up the same time. So that's one thing that you need to remember. And one key things that you need to remember when you're writing the code is every time that you add an element to the list, okay, it takes up the extra space in the memory. Now, what it means is the Python, it allocates some extra space beyond the length of the original list, but once that space becomes full, the entire list needs to be copied to a new memory location. Okay, so that is something that you need to do. And whenever you perform some kind of an operation like an append, so in such scenarios, okay, so with some overhead, like you'll be having the additional copy as well in such scenarios. Okay, and also whenever you want to search some element in a list, okay, you'll have to, in such scenarios, let us check as how much time it will take whenever we are searching an element inside a small list. So let's say I'll mention as 100 in small list. If I search in a small list and if I try to do the same thing, okay, in a large list, let us check as how much time it would take. So if you look at it in this scenario, okay, so in this scenario, it is approximately taking Like I can say overall some kind of a 1,000 times as long. Okay, it is approximately taking 1,000 times as long, which means if you have got a Python list, okay, so when you are trying to like fetch an element from a Python list in your code in the production environment, so consider the length of the Python list. If the length of the Python list grows, then the time it will take to return that element will become slow. Okay, so that is one additional key thing that you need to remember whenever you're writing the code. Okay, whenever you're writing the code for using the Python programming language. Okay, so in such scenarios, so if you want to check whether an element is present or not, maybe the better one could be the dictionary or the set. Okay, that's something that is recommended. And we also have the Python tuples as well while working. So Python tuples, they will have a fixed size and they are immutable. So which means if you create once, you cannot modify it at a later point, and you cannot also attach or append the elements to it. So, which means the tuples are suitable if you have just few items and you want to store it in a data structure. That is when you will be using the tuples in your machine learning project. And apart from the tuples, we also have dictionaries. So these dictionaries that we have got, they are another essential data structure that we have got in Python. And here, as you know, this is based on the key value pair, which means these are basically the pairs of data elements which has some linkage between them. Okay, that's the overall idea about this Python dictionary. Now, uh, I've got a question for you guys. If you have someone and if you have got a programming background, so how does these Python dictionaries are powered? Okay, so how exactly is it going to work in the backend? So can anyone answer about the Python dictionary, how it will be stored or created in the backend? What do you think, guys? Okay, Rakshit says, okay, there is some kind of level it will take. Okay, so, okay, yeah, that's a common property, Rakshit. Okay, Dheeraj says somewhere I have read that some kind of a, okay, what is it? Okay, hash table. Exactly right, Dheeraj. Okay, so as Dheeraj mentioned, so under the hood, what happens is so these Python dictionaries that we have got, they are powered by what we call it as the hash table. So these basically use the hash function to turn the key into an index for a particular list. Okay, that's the overall idea that works in the backend. Now, here, whenever we are working with such Python dictionary, okay, now we have observed that as the collection grows, the time it will take to fetch an element from a Python list is going to increase it, right? So let's see what happens if we are working with a Python dictionary. So in order to work with this Python dictionary, let me just create some dummy dictionary. I'll create some dummy dictionary by saying it as from faker. I'll import faker. Okay, I'll use this faker generator to generate the same. I'll say fake is equal to faker, which is basically an object. Okay. Now, once I instantiate my faker, I'll just generate some small dictionary. Okay. I'll just create a small dictionary in this way, and I'll say for I in range 10, maybe we'll create some 20 elements. Okay. I'll say small dictionary, and I'll simply mention it in this way. I'll say fake dot name. Okay, for the name, I'll set it equal to fake dot address. So this will just go ahead and generate some fake details. Now, if I simply display my small dictionary, okay, so this has created a dictionary which contains the key value pair, which contains some fake name and its associated fake address. Okay, that's what I've created. Now, in such scenarios, now let's try to get some random element and let's see how much time it will take. I'll say time it, and I will say small dict, and I'll try to query the single key. Let's assume that this is the one. I'll try to query this Vincent. Okay. Now, if I try to extract a single value from this small Python dictionary, it is taking the time of 15.2 ns. Now, let's do one thing. Let's create a large dictionary now. So I'll say large dictionary. Okay, instead of 20, I'll be generating 20,000. Okay, and I'll just populate some fake name and address. Okay, now once that is done, I'll try to uh, generate some values. Okay, what I'll do is I'll copy my previous cell and I'll try it out with last dictionary and see how much time it will take to fetch an individual element on this large dictionary. Okay, it says that the key is not present. Let me just get some dummy data. Okay, Emily Price. So now if I try to get a single element from this large dictionary, let's check how much time it would take. See, if you look at it, if you compare both, that is small dictionary and the large dictionary, so that time is almost the same. Even though the second dictionary that we have got, it is maybe 1000 times larger than the small dictionary. Okay, so it is extremely efficient if you want to get an element. Okay, if you want to get an element over here. Okay, that is something that you need to remember when you are working with this Python dictionary. So whenever you're working, okay, so if you are having a use case and when you're trying to write a code where we are trying to fetch the element from a large sequence, then in such scenarios it is recommended that like you make use of this Python dictionary, guys. Okay, so is it clear to all of you? Any questions, team? Thank you, Darshan. Thank you, Samiksha. Thank you, D'Souza. Thank you, Lakshmikant. Thank you, Samyukta. Okay, thank you, Darshan. Excellent, guys. Thank you so much, team, for your confirmation. Okay, so we have looked into the strategies that you need to follow for the various use case. So we have seen that if you want to, if you are working in a simple scenario, like you can make use of the list. Okay, so when you're working with the list, we have seen that if you want to get an element using its index position, then it is recommended to make use of the list. If you want to get an element, okay, uh, like based on the key value, okay, in such scenarios, it is recommended that you make use of the Python dictionary. Okay, those are the key things that you need to remember when we are working with this, like our built-in data structure, that is list and dictionary. And we also have the set. So when we talk about the Python set, so Python set, as you know, it's a data structure where there is no ordering. It's we also call it as the unordered data. So that's the Python set. So here, even just like the Python dictionary, it uses the hash table in the backend. Okay, and here it will make use of some sort of unique keys to have all the elements as unique. That's what it does in the backend. Okay, so let's go ahead and see how it actually works. So here, when we are working in a sequence, okay, so let's see as how it actually works. So when we are working with the Python set, guys, so let's consider an example. Let's say I want to check, okay, if I have a large list, let's get the large list. What was it? It is LR. Okay. So if I want to go ahead, okay, and make use of this large list, if I have this large list, so this is the time it will take to get an element from this large list. Now what I'll do is this time I would go ahead and convert this, whatever the large list that I've got, I would convert it into a set. I would convert it into the set. So if I convert it into the set, okay, so this is how much time it will take. Let me do one thing. I'll say ls is equal to set of lr. Okay, so what I did was, okay, so I have actually converted that list into a set, and then I have performed the lookup. So when we do that activity, okay, we have seen that it takes up to 3 times as long as my list would take. So that's what we would consider it right here. Okay, so that's what we see right here. Now let me do one thing. Now if I simply execute, okay, once I've done the conversion, if I simply try to get an element, so now if you look at it, okay, now if you look at it, so it took only 18.1 ns. So which means here when we are working, so once the conversion is completed, it would be much faster. It would be much faster to work with the same whenever we are working. So that's the overall idea about the working with the built-in data structures, guys. Okay, so we have looked into the how to work with this built-in data structures and the best practices that we need to do whenever we are performing the coding. Now, apart from that, obviously we have the NumPy library. So when we are working with the NumPy library, it's always recommended that it's always recommended that you make use of the various built-in functions of the NumPy library when you're working with the array data. So that is the expectation and that's the suggestion, guys. Okay, now moving on, the next topic that we have got is the errors and logging with Python. So that's what we have got right here, that is errors and logging. Now, as and when you are working in Python, okay, especially when you are modularizing the code and when you're trying to create it as a Python modules, okay, that is the Python script, it is very important that you also take care of the errors, which are the common errors, so that you can get that errors, okay, you can get the errors and try to resolve such errors as and when it is required. Okay, that's the expectation here, team guys. Okay, so whenever you are trying to work with the errors, so this general strategy that we would use is we'll make use of try and except block. I can say it as try and mention some code. Okay, and then I can also go ahead and call as accept, and I can also mention, okay, what kind of exception that I want to catch. Let's say key error, and I can go ahead and mention the same around it. Okay, I can mention as how it should be. So what it means is, if the try block, okay, if the try block contains the code that we want to run, and if we come across an error, okay, if it belongs to the key error, then I can go ahead a set of statements. I can go ahead and execute a statement or a set of statements as part of my requirement. So that's the overall idea about the error handling. To give you an example, this is a very simple example of implementing the try and except. So maybe I'll just I'll like maybe I want to just perform the fit on my training data. I'll say model.fit and mention my training data. And once I mention my training data, here I'm performing the fit. Now, if we come across any value error, maybe I can go ahead and say value error and mention my own error message, or I can mention my type error or the exception. If I simply execute this, see, it says that an unexpected error occurred, name model is not defined. Because the exception that I was getting earlier is the model not defined. Okay, because of that reason. So it's an unexpected error that has occurred, and and it also displays the error message as well. So whenever you are writing the code, if you think that there can be an error that might happen, it's recommended that you implement the sort of technique that is try and except technique. Okay, that's the idea about the same. Now, apart from that, we have a capability that's called as logging. So we can make use of this logging functionality so that as and when the execution progresses, we can actually log the important messages. Okay, so this logging is basically, it's a method of recording what the code has done in a separate file whenever the code is being executed. So that means the code can communicate to the other people as what is exactly going on. So this will help the other people, the reasons about the code. It also makes the code more readable, and it is also more robust because there is a record of what happens if something goes wrong. Okay, so by using the logging functionality in Python, so this will help us to save a record of what the code has done till now. Now, this is basically little different from getting the different like from getting the code to print out the messages, because here whenever you are printing the messages, you are just going to print it. But here in this case, since when we talk about logging, we can save the content into the external file. Okay, we can save the content into an external file. It can be the log file. So that's the overall idea about the same. Now the question is, okay, now the question is, what should we perform the log? I mean, how should we perform the log, and what is it that we need to perform the logging? Well, so one of the key thing that we use it whenever we want to perform the log is the logging module. So we can make use of this logging module, and using this we can record whenever a message that we want to record. That's the overall idea about this logging module. Okay, so to give you an illustration as how does the usage of this logging would look like, I'll just show you an example. Okay, I'm going to include the logging for the previous example that I've shown. See, I have imported the logging. Okay, and here the first thing that we need to do is we need to configure the logging. Now, in this case, I'm configuring the logging with the file name. I'll have to specify the file name. The file name is ml.log. That's the file name that I would mention. And we can mention your own file name if you require. And once that is done, we also have to specify the logging level. There are four levels that are supported. In this scenario, I'm making use of the logging level of information. And I'm mentioning some format, ASCII time, the level name, and the messages. This is what I see right here. Okay. Now, once that is done, if I simply execute this, see a file has been created that is ml.log. And if I double click this file, you can see that whatever the log that we tried to log earlier, it is present here in this file. So by implementing this logging, okay, you yourself is setting the best practices over here in the code. So with this, you'll have a much better control if during the machine learning model testing, let us assume that you might expect a kind of an error or you want to know what has happened. Maybe you can write your code by adding such logging principles over there. Okay, so that's the overall idea about logging. And that's the overall idea about logging and the exception handling, guys. And the other key aspect from the machine learning project standpoint is linting the Python code. So let's talk about the linting the Python code. Now, when I say linting the Python code, so linting means checking your code for any error before it performs the run. That's what we call it as the linting. Okay, so what it does is, okay, so these Python linters will analyze the code that we have written and it will warn us of some of the things that would cause the code to fail whenever you try to proceed to run it. Okay, so some of the examples can be is like suppose if you have got a variable name which is there where there is a any spelling error. Okay, in such scenarios you'll get an error from this linting. Suppose you forgot to import a module. Okay, you'll get the error. So in such scenarios when you are making use of the linting, okay, so it will throw an error whenever you are working. Now to perform those kind of linting, we have got various libraries. So we have Flake 8, we have PyInt, PyLint, and we have Rough. So these are the three commonly used tools when it comes to linting. So all these tools will check the formatting of the code for compliance with style guide, and then they'll also like spot the formatting issue and so on. Those are the various capabilities of these linting tools. Okay, so let's take a look into the same. So if I want to work with one of the linting tool that is PyLint, then the first thing that I need to do is I will have to go ahead and I'll have to go ahead and install the PyLint. Okay, that's what we need to do, guys. Okay, so just a second, team. Okay, team, I'm back. Okay, so as I've mentioned, when it comes to linting, we've got the tools that is PyLint, Rough, and Flake 8. So these are the various tools that we have got. So first thing, whenever you want to get started with such tools is, first you need to do the installation. I'll just show you some demonstration as how you can actually use it. So first thing is you need to do the installation. Let's say I'll say it as pip install PyLint. Okay, so this would go ahead and install the PyLint in my local system. Now, once it is installed, so in order to check, okay, the coding things in my local system, we need to uh, call PyLint followed by the Python script that we have got. I'll go to one of the repository that I have got where I have it present. Maybe, let's say, yeah, I'll go to this folder of complete MLOps bootcamp. Maybe I'll go inside the folder of prediction model. Here I'll go inside maybe a folder called packaging. Yeah, packaging the ML model. So I'll go inside packaging ML model. So there is, let me just go into a folder where I have some folders present, guys. Okay. So we have a folder. Okay, we have some files over here that is training pipeline.py. So this is basically a Python script that I've got. Now, this Python script is like let's apply the pilot on this Python script and see what kind of message that we would get. Okay, so I'll say pilot. Okay, training pipeline.py. So when I say pilot training pipeline.py, so you can look into some of the recommendations that you're getting it from this pilot tool. So what it says is, okay, so there are some trailing white spaces over here, okay, and it says final new line is missing, okay, in one scenario, and in another case it says missing module that is docstring. So it also mentions some code over here. It also mentions some code over here. So so C is nothing but the conventions, W is nothing but the warning. So all those things that is mentioned. So what it says is, so when I'm executing, it says there are unused libraries, like there is an import of pandas and numpy. Okay, and there is also an import that I have done, that is model pre-processing as PP, and all these things that I have imported in that Python script, but I'm not using it. So which means I can simply go ahead and remove it, and for the code that was created, okay, for the demonstration purpose, it was rated as 1.43. So basically with the help of this pilot, so you'll be able to scan the script and it will reveal the number of errors, and whenever it doesn't follow the convention it will show us the same, and we can actually fix it, and we can also rerun as well. Okay, the same thing would work in the with the help of this fake 8 library, and there's also the rough, so it works in the same way. That's the basic idea of this linting that we say whenever you are creating the code. So you can use this linting to check the quality of the code, guys. All right, team. Now, apart from that, when you're working in any machine learning project, apart from that, the other key things that is highly recommended is basically the packaging of the code. The packaging of the code and usage of the version control system and creation of the Docker image. So the reason these things are very important, because so when we talk about the Docker image or Docker container, here basically like whenever we create any code for the machine learning project, generally it will work in our computers without any issues, isn't it? But if I want that same performance, same kind of working in the production environment, I have to ensure that the configuration of my production system is in line with my laptop to have the repeatable environment. So that's when we'll be making use of the Dockers and the Docker containers. So the creation of the Docker container and how to create the same, that's also an important activity that is required whenever you are working, guys. Okay, so like there is already a detailed session that we have created as part of a learning journey in the last time. So if I want to share that specific video about the Docker, let me just show you right here, team. Okay, so you can check out the various previous live sessions that was conducted. So we had conducted a session on Docker containers for machine learning. Let me share that link over here in the chat window. So I highly recommend you to check out the same. So do check out this video to learn more about the importance of Docker and how we could use it for machine learning. So basically, we'll start by creating a Docker file, and we'll specify the commands, and then we'll create a Docker image, and we can push to a Docker registry. Then once the image is pushed to the Docker registry, we can actually use that Docker registry, like image that has been pushed to the Docker registry, and we can create a Docker container and run the machine learning system, like machine learning application that we have created. So overall, as part of your learning journey today, so you have looked into the various aspects of like writing the Python code for the production environment. You have looked into the best practices of writing the code. You have looked into the usage of data structures, the key concepts that you need to learn and remember, the power of errors and logging, how you can test the code, and I've also shared the importance of version control, dependencies, and packaging. So guys, with this, we come to the end of today's session. So, team, I hope you have understood or made the most of the session. Now, folks, I want to know from you, were you able to follow along with me? And do you think there's an improvement that needs to be done on the way that we deliver the session? Do let me know. And if you have got any specific topic on your mind, so please also let me know what kind of topics that you would wish to see in our upcoming webinars. All right, guys. Now, a quick reminder, as I mentioned, since for the learners who have joined the sessions today, so don't forget to make use of the coupon code webinar25. Okay, using this coupon code of webinar 25, you can avail 25% discount on the prices that you see on the Manifold AI learning site. So there's an MLOps bootcamp, there is an LLM Ops bootcamp, which is with deploying the LLM models to the production. This is a pre-release course, and there is a MLOps course with AWS, NLP, statistics. So there's a lot of courses, mathematics for AI. Feel free to check out their site for the best offers, guys, and use the coupon code of webinar25 to avail 25% off. So, guys, so thank you again, and thank you so much. And if you want to speak or if you want to ask any question, please raise your hand. I can allow you to speak for the learners who have joined through the Zoom link. So others who have joined through our social media channels, please post your questions in the comments tab, and I'll be happy to answer you guys. Okay, thank you, Dheeraj. Okay, some learner saying that, sir, can you please do a okay Python basics? Definitely, we can do that. Okay, thank you so much, guys. I can see some learners have joined the okay MLOps program. I can see some okay, confirmation from admissions team. Okay, I'm glad, guys. So for the learners who have joined the MLOps program with Manifold AI Learning, so I'm glad that I got an opportunity to interact with you guys. I look forward to seeing you next time. So as I mentioned, the all the sessions will be recorded and it is made available to you under the Manifold AI Learning workshops. Go ahead and check out the link, and you'll be able to access the live session from here. Okay, thank you so much again, and I'll see you next time.